Welcome, degenerates. And no, I don't mean that in a bad way whatsoever. But you know what? It takes a special type of NFL fan, Miami Dolphins fan, to really dive into the combine. I think most people love the NFL draft, but you know what? It takes a special type of commitment to love the Underwear Olympics, aka the NFL scouting combine. So yeah, that's what we're diving in today. I'm an off-season junkie, so this stuff is just great. I'm going to be glued to this coverage over the next few days here. But Thursday was the first on-field day of the 2024 NFL scouting combine. It was the defensive line and it was the linebacker. So we're going to be discussing a handful of potential Dolphins targets from today's on-field action. But quite honestly, I mean, if you watched it, if you've seen the list of people that are participating in the NFL combine, it's long. There's a lot of good players. There's a lot of great potential targets of the Miami Dolphins. So there's a lot of players I want to cover, but I want to be mindful of your time as always. So I'm going to put this out there. If you've got questions on any prospects that were on the field today, if you've got comments on guys that I didn't get to cover, go ahead, drop them in the comments. I am happy to provide any insight that I have, any opinions that I have on the guys that you knock out as well. So we're going to put that out there. But like I said, I've got a handful, a little bit more than a handful of defensive linemen and linebackers that we saw on the field today that piqued my curiosity, that already had my curiosity, and are definitely targets of your Miami Dolphins. So without further ado, let's jump in right away with T'Vondre Sweat of Texas, the number that we were all waiting for, 366. Yes, that is what he weighed in at. And he actually talked to the media a little bit about his weight and said, you know what, some of these bigger guys, they can kind of just go about, do whatever. Don't have to worry about maintaining their weight. He goes, I have to work hard. I can't just be sitting around. So yeah, 366 is a big number. He has to work to maintain that number, which we'll see in the NFL. That can be a concern at some level in time if people are coming in overweight. But I'm not going to put that on him right now. We knew he was going to be a big guy. 366 pounds, definitely proved that as well. I do believe that his 40-yard dash time was the worst of all interior defensive lines. Guess what? No one's looking too far into that. No one's caring what this 366-pound guy is clocking in at the 40. We're not asking him to cover anyone. We're not asking him to chase plays down. But you know what? A 5'2" at that weight, you know what we're looking for at the 40 at that point in time? Some level of athleticism. And if you're going 5'2" in the 40-yard dash at 366 pounds, you are an athlete. By all standards, by every mean of the definition, you are an athlete. Definitely a second-round target at pick number 55 for the Dolphins, especially depending on what ends up playing out here with Christian Wilkins. Hopefully we have a little bit of clarity at some point of that pretty soon here as well. My connection with the team did tell me that T'Vondre Sweat is even higher on the Miami Dolphins list of possibilities in that second round after what he did at the combine today. He is the player, if you remember from the first mock draft we did, I think it was a couple of weeks ago now, at number 55, that pick in the second round, he was the pick at that point in time. Nothing from today is changing in that department. If he was on the board, he'd still likely have a good shot, at least in my book. Let's talk a little bit about Chris Jenkins out of Michigan, because sort of opposite of Sweat, Jenkins came in a little bit on the lighter side at 299 pounds. So there are some concern. There are some draft analysts that say, yeah, maybe he lacks a little bit of that ideal size from the interior to take on double teams, to clog up those run lanes. I tell you what, though, you put on his tape, playing at Michigan, winning a national championship, and performing against those athletes and that caliber of competition the way he did, he holds his own on the interior. Had the 5th best 40 of the defensive linemen, the 4th best broad jump, looked smooth in basically every single drill that I watched him in. The NFL mock draft database has him as the number 52 overall prospect. So definitely an interior defensive lineman to keep your eye on in the second round as well. Let's do one more interior defensive lineman. That's Mekhi Wingo out of LSU. We're talking about another undersized interior defensive lineman. That's what you're going to hear. That's what they're going to talk about when you're talking about Wingo. And that's likely a big reason why he is currently projected in that 4th round range. If he was the more prototype size, he doesn't need to be Sweat size, but if he was the more prototype interior defensive line size, you're likely looking at a second, third round prospect. Today in the combine, second best 40, the best 10-yard split in the 40 at 1.64 seconds, the seventh best vertical, which was only 2 inches behind the overall leader in that category, and the ninth best broad jump, once again, just 2 inches from being the sixth best in that category. So a very nice overall day of testing. Showed great feet, good balance in the bag drill, looked very natural in the drills of his that they aired on the NFL Network coverage as well. Overall, he looked explosive, not much at all in regards to wasted movement. Quite honestly, if teams are willing to look past his size, which is a big ask, we're talking about the 1% of the 1% essentially of athletes in the world that play football. Teams can look past that size, man. He could work his way into being a day 2 selection. Let's transition over to the linebackers. We'll start with Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M. He had the third best 40 of the linebackers, tied for the first best 10-yard split in the 40, eighth best vertical, once again, just 2 inches short of being third best in that department. But he is the player. You watch him at the combine, you put on his game field, athleticism pops. You hear that? That's a cliche from draft analysts. It's that way for a reason. He pops when you put on his tape. Drills today were smooth. He had the best Pro Football Focus defensive grade of all draft eligible linebackers in this year's crop of linebackers. He will actually be the number 1 overall linebacker on numerous teams' draft boards, and it's for a pretty damn good reason. The nice thing about Miami in this situation is the position of linebacker overall, it's not quite valued the way that it was like back in the day. It's getting closer up there. We saw Jack Campbell go in the first round to the Lions this past draft. So linebacker's kind of working its way up, but it's still not quite valued the way that it was back in the day. Back in the day, this is a first round prospect. I would say today, there's at least a chance for the team to draft him in the second round. If the Dolphins go, I was going to say, let's put it this way. If the Dolphins go defense in round 2, I personally think Cooper and Sweat are the team's top options to target, at least at this point of the offseason. Let's go to Trevin Wallace, linebacker out of Kentucky. Now, he was we'll call him my honorable mention candidate on your players to watch in the combine preview video that I did. And quite honestly, what he did today at the combine kind of proved why. Tied for the third best in the 40-yard dash of the linebackers. Second best vertical, second best broad jump. Sort of figured he would test well. Today did not disappoint. The athleticism was 100% on display. So he goes into the combine as a projected 5th rounder by the NFL mock draft database. If anything, today probably increased his stock. Thursday's on-field performance increased that stock. Now, the tough part about him is, this Dolphins draft situation. Don't have a 3rd rounder, don't have a 4th rounder. So they would need him to absolutely fall to the 5th unless they make a trade. But he's that day 2, day 3 prospect that's quite honestly quickly kind of climbing up that draft crush list that we always talk about. He's the one that I'm kind of falling in love with, that athleticism that he is absolutely bringing to the linebacker position. Let's do one more, and it's Peyton Wilson out of NC State. Highly decorated linebacker prospect coming out of NC State. If it wasn't for the injury history, we're likely talking about that borderline first-round prospect. Like I said, even playing at linebacker, a position that's been devalued a little bit when it comes to draft capital. The NFL mock draft database has him as the number 54 overall prospect. Guess what? Yeah, we're picking number 55. Fastest 40-yard dash of all linebackers. 4th best 10-yard split of all linebackers in the 40. He wasn't in the top 5 in the vertical or the broad jump, but quite honestly, he posted good enough numbers in those drills, where the numbers, in my opinion, they're really of no concern. It's not showing any sort of lack of athleticism. And quite honestly, his athleticism is another thing that sort of pops off the screen when you're watching him. So definitely a possibility for the Miami Dolphins in that 2nd round range. However, you're going to have the caveat with him always. There might be teams out there that say, you know what, he'd have to have a hell of a slide for us to even consider him because of the amount of injuries that he suffered throughout his collegiate career, the way it was. Kind of sad. This dude is a hell of a prospect, but like I said, that injury history is just going to follow this guy around. Regardless, a guy to keep an eye on. But that is what I've got from today's coverage. Like I said, we're going to be doing this throughout the NFL Combine. So one, get subscribed if you haven't done so already. Like I said, drop your thoughts, drop your prospects, drop your questions in the comments. We'll make sure we get to all of them. And let's get set for tomorrow's. It's defensive backs, it's tight ends. That's what we are going to be watching and covering tomorrow. That is what I've got for today, Dolphins fans. Until next time, fins up.